Okay, guys, for the flexibility component of the program, for whatever reason, flexibility does not get nearly enough attention in anybody's program or philosophy, I think. Most programs tend to focus on a strength component. You'll find some things that focus on meditation or mindfulness. But for whatever reason, flexibility gets pushed to the side, and it is just as crucial as these other two pieces, okay? There's an ancient Indian adage that says something like, you can measure a person's age by the length of their spine. And this is very much true. As we all get older, and you guys can probably feel right now, if you just do basic movements or stand up and move, you can probably feel the difference in your mobility now compared to how you were when you were 18 or 15 years old. And as we age, the body starts to lock up and find certain tracks. Okay, in some cases, this is due to tension that enters the muscle. Okay, we've got myosin and actin fibers that do this every time we contract. They separate when we relax. The more we do the same things, they just kind of get stuck in the middle here and don't do too much. But the second reason is because we have fascia, which is this strange kind of tissue that covers the entire body, pretty much. Every muscle is wrapped in fascia, and there are fascial links that go from head to toe, pretty much. And they connect joints to muscles, to cartilage, to every part of the body is connected through fascial networks and links. And these have some kind of memory, okay? So the more that you stay in certain positions, a lot of people talk about muscle memory. It's really much more about how our fascia gets molded into certain types of patterns, essentially. And you can probably feel that now. It's a lack of mobility that you feel. It's kind of the insecurity to move with power or with grace. And in some cases, it's the need that all of us feel that we have to warm up before we exercise. If you look at animals in nature, they take 3 seconds to warm up. Okay? For whatever reasons, humans need 15 to 20 minutes normally before they actually exercise. This is not how animals are built, and we are animals. Okay? You look at babies, for example, as well, or infants. They'll get up and they'll just sprint. They'll get up and they'll leap. And this is a natural state for all of us. But the more that we get away from moving in general and working our full range in particular, the less capable we are to actually move with the same kind of spontaneity. Now, as such, in weightlessness, the idea is not that you treat flexibility as an independent craft or practice. Okay? I don't particularly care how flexible somebody is in the grand scheme of things, but I care how well you're able to move with power and with grace. And for these things, you need to be able to activate enough range in your movement, in your fitness, in your daily life, so that you don't get injured, so that you don't pull or tear muscles, that you don't damage your joints. And flexibility is crucial, and it's fundamental for this. Okay? Now, there are 3 primary things that you should focus on when you're stretching. The first is your breath. The second is your spine, and in particular, the lower portion of the spine, where the tailbone is either tucked under or facing straight down. And the third is your alignment. And these are very, very basic things. Once you get a feel for the principle, try not to worry about mastering the techniques of each one of these so much. The techniques are not bad, but if you understand the principles behind them, you can learn all stretches relatively quickly, and you can unlock your length and potential flexibility very quickly. Okay? So to the first point, the breath. When you're breathing, we use somewhat of a meditative type of breath. You should breathe into the lower abdomen. But the difference now is that when we exhale, we want to control the pace through the throat. Okay? We talk about in meditation how if we take in more air, more oxygen than we release, it's energizing. And if we take in more energy than we're exerting, then that difference is going to actually manifest in terms of the physical sensation of having more energy. You're not going to feel like you need to sleep as much. You're not going to need to eat as much. You're actually filling the body with more energy through oxygen, which helps you actually metabolize body fat for energy better. Okay? But the flip side of this, and if you watch people who are depressed, for example, and they exhale, and you observe it in yourself, observe it in people that you know, but this is a very common breath pattern. They'll breathe out, very long exhale, and then there will be a long pause at the end of it. And then eventually a recognition, I haven't breathed in a while. And then a very long exhale. And what's interesting, you find this breath pattern in a lot of smokers due to the puffing type of practice. And you see it in people that are kind of chronically depressed or have issues with mood. And you'll see it when you're depressed, because it is forcing that state of relaxation. It affects your hormones, it affects your mentality, but we can activate it in this one rare case where it helps us to actually release and fully relax the body, okay? So again, a very simple premise. To energize, you take in more air than you're exerting, and you flip that if you want to establish greater length in the body, greater relaxation, to fall asleep, and to stretch, okay? So an example of that pattern would look like this. Controlling the exhale with the throat, making it as long as possible, allowing your mind time to connect with the muscle that you're trying to extend and relax, okay? The second part there is the spine, okay? In most of the exercises that we do, and including strength training exercises, a lot of people will make the mistake of rounding out the back this way, where the tailbone is tucked under and the lower back is quite rounded out, okay? This is a danger in strength training, and it's also a danger in stretching, okay? The only way that you can unlock the hamstring and glute region is by untucking the tailbone and have it facing straight back. I've heard some people refer to this as the sexy butt technique, but it's really simply flattening out the spine and pushing the butt back. And this is the way that we keep the tailbone untucked. This is the same for the front splits and side splits. And then the last category is alignment. When you're looking at alignment, our body has built-in intelligence, okay? A lot of people try to overcomplicate flexibility, they try to overcomplicate alignment, but it's extremely simple when we start to stretch, and when we breathe for that matter. Everything should be in a straight line. A lot of people talk about, well, maybe the ankles are pronated, or the knees are slightly pointed in or out. These things don't matter so much for most people. You may have an extreme case, in which case it would help to have a private trainer for a while to sort it out. But most of us have these issues, not because of the joints, but because we have too much tension on one side of the leg. Okay, and once this starts to happen, it pulls the knee in one direction, it pulls the foot in one direction, and then we start to have an asymmetry and an imbalance in the body that will manifest all throughout. Okay, and we simply correct this by, when we stretch, we make sure that we're in proper alignment, and we build that into the body, okay? And when we're working with the front splits, and this sequence that is going to be the forward bends and the front splits, simply be conscious that you are not in an absolute straight line, which is foot in front of foot, but look at your shoulders, look at your hips, and look at the way that simply our legs are placed side by side with one another. And as I start to stretch, these lines should not change. I don't cross over to try to get both feet in one line. I keep my leg in line with my hip. I keep my foot vertical in line with my knee, and so on and so forth. Okay? So those are the three big pointers that you got to keep in mind. Now, in terms of the weightlessness approach, one last point before we look at our sequence. Weightlessness is very much about peak performance, okay? And it's about activating our flexibility and our ability to move with freedom and grace as quickly as possible. We don't do very many isolated stretches. You'll find people that focus on stretches, and the myriad ways of doing that are infinite, really. Okay, but in weightlessness, we look at a couple of primary vectors, and the ones that you guys are going to be focusing on for the first part of the program is very simple. It's the front and rear line of the body. I mentioned already this idea of fascia that spans essentially the entire body. It's amazing. If you were to remove the skin from somebody, we still have tissue that spans from head to toe, and you would still have the form of a human being even after you remove the skin, which is these fascial connections that go throughout the body. But what these can do, if we're not relaxed again, is they tighten us up and they lock us together. Okay, if we've created these patterns throughout sitting too much, not moving too much, not exercising, not hydrated enough, for example. But once we start to undo this, we don't look at the body in isolation. Okay, so I'm not looking at only, well, how do I stretch hamstring? How do I stretch quadricep? How do I stretch, a pec or tricep or any of these things? We're looking at the longest range of functional movement, okay? We'll put a quick slide up there here that looks like how these fascial networks are connected, just so you can have a quick look. But essentially, from head to toe, this is connected, okay? From head to toe on the back, I'm connected. And so what we want to do is look to activate and extend that entire range with the most basic movements. Now, the stretches themselves are not that basic. We're going to be working toward the front splits. But it saves us a lot of time when we're not doing 20 different stretches to stretch every part of the body. We're really looking how we progressively move into the fullest length. Okay? So, moving into our primary stretch for at least the first part of the program. Okay? Keeping in mind our main pointers, the first one, the feet can be slightly apart, close together, or maybe maximum about 6 inches. Okay, I'm using blocks here because I'm assuming that most of you can't already do the full splits or necessarily a standing toe touch, like so, for example, on the back of the wrists and get a full bend. And so what these do is, if you can't do that, as you can see, if I'm a little bit tight and I start to bend, the lower back takes the brunt of that stretch, okay? If, however, I am keeping the hands elevated and I'm able to bend down, I'm able to keep the back much flatter, much longer, and the stretch goes then directly into the hamstrings and the glutes, okay? So for the first round, we're going to focus essentially, the knees can stay slightly bent for the first round, but I bend forward from the hips, not the back. I go as far as I can, and I elevate the hands. If you don't need blocks, if you don't need books or handlebars or weights or whatever you're using, then no need for them if you have the flexibility. But these are for people that might need a little bit of extra support. So again, we breathe in. Very long exhale. And then you're going to hold it for probably 20 to 30 seconds. Breathe in again. Slowly release, and every time that you exhale, you're going to release more tension. But mentally, you need to be in those points of tension, and you need to try to consciously relax those muscles. For most people, that's going to fall in the hamstrings, it's going to fall in the glutes, and if the back is very tight, you may feel it there as well. Okay? After the forward bend, you're going to go into the hip flexor stretch. We're going to drop the back knee, take a big step, and then we're going to try to lower the front thigh as far as we can, okay? Again, notice if I'm on the ground here, my back is going to start to arch a lot more. And if I elevate my hand, I'm able to keep my spine straight and drop the hip a lot farther without creating too much tension in the back, okay? For this, we'll do both sides. For this, you'll hold for about 20 to 30 seconds or so on each side. Then we're going to cycle back through. If you're very tight, the second round can be the same as the first, okay? If you're starting to loosen up, and once you start to get experience with this is going to serve you probably for the first 3 to 4 weeks of the program, okay? So complexity won't increase, but you should be improving. And as you do, you'll need less of the preparatory round, which is what we just did, and you'll be able to move into the next round, which is from here. Now locking the legs out straight, okay? Taking a deep breath. And I don't go straight down. A lot of people make the mistake on the forward bend of thinking that we're going straight to the ground, forces the back to round out, and then you either over pull or you just lack, you don't stretch the muscles we're targeting very well here, okay? The back eventually will stretch. This is what we look at when we see the full fascial link from head to toe. But engage the back last. Make sure that you are targeting the hamstrings and the glutes. These are probably the prime movers when it comes to the forward bend and flexibility throughout the rear train of the body. Okay? So take a deep breath. You'll breathe out. You'll bend from the waist, not the back. I'll extend away from myself until I touch the blocks. Okay, I can shake the feet out a little if I need. My knees are straight, however. Okay? Another breath in. Mentally connected to the hamstrings and the glutes. Every time releasing a little bit more tension, okay? Eventually you'll get to a point where you can put the fingers on the ground, flat palms, rear palms. Breathe in and out, okay? And you'll work into a full forward bend with time. Give yourself time for the tension to release. The first probably 7 days to maybe even 2 weeks, your body will be carrying tension from years. You need to let that sort itself out and put a little bit more time into the stretch. After that, you'll be able to release it in only a few breaths. It'll get faster and faster as you get looser and more flexible, okay? So that's the beginning of the second round. Moving into the next one. Okay, so then we start with our hip flexor, just as we did. And then we start to extend the front foot. Okay, so here we'll straighten that out. Notice I'm not opening my hip. This stays square, this stays straight. My foot is straight up, and my back is straight. Okay, you don't want to be doing it this way where you're really hunched over, the lower back is quite bent. Even if you need taller objects to use, make sure the spine is straight, because that's what's going to unlock the range in the hamstring. So then you'll do both sides and you'll push that out to a good degree and you'll hold it there. You'll hold it there and you'll breathe for about 30 to 40 seconds again. You'll pull it back and you'll do the second side. Now when we go to the third round, you should always try to get 3 rounds. Each time you'll find that you're getting a little bit looser. Okay, in the beginning, you may want to put more time in. You may want to put 10 minutes into this component of the program. If you do that and you are very conscientious about the training, by the end of 1 month, you should only need probably 2 to 3 minutes to reap the same kind of relaxation into the stretch that it takes you to get there in 10 minutes in the beginning. And it's well worth it. It'll pay off. And on the last round, okay, I start the sequence the same, down, up and breathe again. Stretching, feeling that stretch throughout the calves, the knees are straight, the hamstrings, the glutes, and at the very end only, I bend and allow my back to be engaged. Hold that for 30, 40 seconds. Lower down, we stretch, hip flexor first, and then I extend the front leg a little bit farther. Hold that as long as we can. Bring it back, and then the same with the other side, going as far as you can. Okay, breathing into it, releasing that tension, support yourself with something a little bit higher to make sure that the back remains straight. Okay, and that is the full sequence. We are covering the full rear line of the body and most of the front line. And the last pointer that you need to keep in mind, and I mentioned this earlier in the video, is again, when muscle contracts, it does this. Okay, that comes with every type of movement that our body is capable of. Stretching is not pulling the body apart. Okay, it is not pulling against a rigid frame. Stretching is the antithesis of strength training and tension. It's this. Okay. You don't pull the body into that, you relax into that. This is one of the reasons that meditation, for example in yoga, meditation and flexibility come together. It's very hard to access the body without the breath and without the mind. It's very hard to access the mind actually without releasing the body of tension that it's carrying. But you don't do it through force, it's about relaxation. Okay? You must coordinate the breath with the movement. Exhale and elongate. Okay? Pause for a second, re-energize, and then release the stretch a little bit farther. Focus on relaxing into the stretch and not pulling of the muscles. Good luck with it. There's your routine for the first few weeks.